Hey, good morning, everyone. By the way, my name is Asher Polos Beligno, together with my co-reporters, Miss Liza May Ortiz, Mr. Jaron Mark Lahera, Miss Rica Ramos, and Miss Alvena Ruby. So for today's discussion, we'll be discussing to you the literature under the martial law, and also we're going to discuss to you some notable authors together with their notable works under this era in the Philippines. So when the 1970 came, it was said to be the period of activism in the Philippines. This is the time wherein Filipinos wanted reforms in the government, and so Ferdinand Marcos declared martial law under Proclamation number 1081 on September 21, 1972. Some people said that the reign of Marcos was their golden years, while some people said that this was the Philippines' darkest era. But one thing that we're certain of was the government silenced and controlled the media. So they focused more on economic progress, discipline, culture, and the arts. It was either you work for them or go against them. They found out that you were writing or going against them, you would eventually be captured and tortured to ask who you were working for. So in this era, um, writers or authors, even people are limited with their actions regarding in writing literature, and it is said to be one of the harsh eras here in the Philippines. Protest, proletarian, prison, and circumvention are the themes of literature under martial law. Empathy, shock value, and symbolic action are believed to be the three needs of protest literature, in which empathy encourages, shock value stimulates feelings and wants, and symbolic action promotes interpretation. It was impossible to deny the strength of proletarian literature. For a devoted writer engaged in political action, thinking of poetry as beautiful recollected piece was regarded unthinkable. Then there's the prison literature. Many writers were imprisoned from the start of martial law. So therefore, the creativity of the writers has been suppressed and muted. Many writers choose to write on trivial topics in order to avoid being assassinated. Filipino authors begin to utilize their literature to address socio-political problems even before the Marcos administration. So in the year 1970s, for example, there was a flood of poetry, short tales, and novels that dealt with the pressing themes of the day. Some focused on writing love stories and everything that is good and pleasant, while on the other hand, some writers are writing about revolutionary. So the themes of literature during martial law is divided into two. There are the romantic themes and the revolutionary themes. So most poems dealt with patience, regard for native culture, customs, and beauty of nature and surroundings. Many Filipino songs and writings, poems, and poetry dealt with themes that were true to life, like those of grief, poverty, aspirations for freedom, love of God, of country, and of fellow men. So here is Rolando Santos Tino, one of the notable authors during the era of the martial law. So here let us read a little bit of his background. So he was born on March 5, 1937 at Tondo, Manila, Philippine Commonwealth. He died on July 7, 1997 in the age of 60 at Manila, Philippines. He studied at University of Santo Tomas and the State University of Iowa. His occupation is a Filipino writer and actor. He has 2 children named Antonio and Victoria, and his awards are National Artist of the Philippines and Order of National Artists of the Philippines. Here are his sample notable works. Sit-Sit sa Kuliglig, or translated in English as Whistling at Kikadas, or Shushing Kikadas in the year 1972. Dunong Dunungan, or Pendantry, during the year 1975. Kristal na Universo, or Crystal Universe, in the year 1989. Trick of Mirrors in the year 1993. Ang Burgis sa Kanyang Almusal at 1970. And also the Valediction sa Hillcrest. So now we're going to read one of the notable works of Rolando Estino, which is entitled Valediction sa Hillcrest. So, Valediction sa Hillcrest is a poem written by Rolando Tino, which is about Rolando Tino leaving from the USA and going back to the Philippines. He writes his thoughts and experiences in a very descriptive and creative way. The poem also uses 2 different languages, which is English and Tagalog. And the reason why these 2 languages were used is because of the confliction between the 2 nations or countries he is going back to and living. So the poem is composed of 2 languages used, which is English and Filipino. And you see later a combination of Filipino language and English language used in the poem. So, let us read. Valediction sa Hillcrest by Rolando Estino. Pagka-collect ng railway, express sa aking things, inakyat kong muli ang N311 at dahil dead of winter, nakatapkot at galoshes akong nag-right turn sa N-wing ng mahabang dilim. Kinapa ko ang switch sa hall. Sa isang pitik, nag-shrink ang imaginary tunnel, nagparang ataol, or katakam. Strangely absolute an impression ng hilera ng mga pintong nagpuprosisyon, individual identification parang mommy cases, the nameplate, the numero, the hometown address. Antiseptic ang atmosphere, streamlined yet. Kung hindi katakam, at least a feeling cabinet. Filing, hindi naman debts. Ha? Remembrances. Oo. Yung medyo malapot dahil alam mo na. I'm quitting the place. After 2.5 years. Di man nagkatiyempong mag-ugat, ika nga, syempre naging attached. Parang morning glorying, mahirap mapaknit sa alambreng trellis. At pagbukas ko sa kwarto, hubot-hubad na ang mattresses. Wala nang kutson sa easy chair, mga drawer ng bureau'y nakanganga, sabay-sabay nag-oorasyon, nagkahiyaan, nabara. Of course, tuloy ang radiator sa paggaranggal na sa New York na si Bob and the 2 Allans. Yung mga quarterbacks across the hall, pihadong panay ang display sa Des Moines. Doon ang Constance aren't coming back at all. Gusto mo nang magpaalam? To whom? The drapes, the wash bowl, sa double-decker na pinaikot-ikot naming ni Kandaswamy. To create space, hopeless, talagang imposible. Of course, tuloy ang radiator sa paglagutok. Bueno, let's get it over with. It's a long walk to the depot. Tama na ang sophistication. Sa steep incline, pababa sa highway, where all things level, sabi nga, there's a flurry and gentle. Pag whoosh-whoosh ng pako, the snow melts right under. Nagtutubig parang asukal. Humuhulas. Nagsesentimental. Okay, so that is the valediction sa Hillcrest by Rolando Estinio. So for analysis, the poem starts out as the persona is about to leave his apartment, which is situated in New York. The Railway Express, the N311, and the N-Wing are the object used to indicate that he travels and longs to go back to his hometown of Tondo. The winter weather is the metaphor of hardship and traveling from place to place. In stanza 2, the persona further describes his apartment in Tondo, which is a place full of memories. Since the metaphors used were catacombed and mummy cases, these objects are well preserved over time, which is an allusion to his unforgettable experiences and memories, which is preserved and confined forever in his home in Tondo. In stanza 3, the persona used the word malapot or viscous to describe his remembrances to his home place. The persona used also suggested that he will eventually leave the place in the lines, di man nagkatiempong mag-ugat and mahirap mapaknit sa alambreng trellis in the fear of getting attached to the place. In stanza 4, the persona finally went back to his hometown in Tondo in hope to relieve his nausea and come back to his loved ones. But as he opened the door, the place was a mess, empty. Stanza 5 describes how the persona remembers the place back then and where his loved ones have gone now. So these two stanzas depicts that homes aren't much of a home when there is no one there to come back to. In the last stanzas, the persona shows that leaving his home does not matter. Sa steep incline, pababa sa hallway, where all things are level, sabi nga, this line implies that no matter where you settle, all things are level of your character still remains in you. In short, a home does not define who you are or what you will be. It is merely just a place to live at and a place where one nurtures his or herself through experiences acquired in that place. When leaving a home, one will surely leave memories and confine it there, but one's character would always remain intact inside one's soul. So, that is all for my part, which is the introduction of literature under martial law, introducing to you Rolando Estinio and discussing to you one of his notable works, Valedictions Hillcrest. So now let us listen to Mr. Jayron Hera as he's going to discuss, as he's going to continue discussing our lesson. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, especially to you, ma'am, Mrs. Bertudes. I am Jeron Mark Flores Lahera, and I am assigned to discuss to you these two famous authors or two people, which are Jose Maria Flores Lacaba and Lamberto Antonio. But first, let us know who is Jose Maria Flores Lacaba. Jose Maria Flores Lacaba, popularly known as Pete Lacaba, is a Filipino scriptwriter, editor, poet, journalist, and translator. Born in Misamis Oriental in 1945 to Jose Monreal Lacaba of Loan, Bohol, and P. Flores from Pateros, Rizal. He is the brother of the writer and activist Eman Lacaba, who was murdered in March 1976 and later honored at the Philippines Bantayog ng Mga Bayani Memorial as the martyr who fought the Marcos dictatorship. He is also well known for his role in the fight against the President Ferdinand Marcos and his US-backed military dictatorship during the Philippines martial law era. Among his most notable works during this time are his coverage of the first quarter storm, protests for the Philippine Free Press magazine, which were compiled into the book Days of Disquiet, Nights of Rage in 1982, and the controversial poem Prometheus and Bound, an acrostic poem through which he managed to trick the publishers of a pro-Marcos magazine to publish a secretly anti-Marcos message. Lacaba has been especially recognized for his coverage of the first quarter storm. This is an anti-Marcos movement in 1970. The first quarter storm, or Desigwa ng Unang Tangkapat in Filipino, often shortened into the acronym of FUS, was a period of civil unrest in the Philippines, which took place during the first quarter of the year 1970. It included a series of demonstrations, protests, and marches against the administration of President Ferdinand Marcos, mostly organized by students and supported by workers, peasants, and members of the urban poor from January 26 to March 17, 1970. Protesters at these events raised issues relating to social problems, authoritarianism, alleged election cheating, and corruption under Marcos. Lacaba is also recognized as one of the leading figures in Philippine literature today. He is well known in various fields, including creative writing, journalism, editing, and script writing. He worked with well-known directors like Leno Bruca and Mike De Leon in producing films that expose ordinary people's lives that experience poverty and injustice. His screenplay credits including Jaguar, which competed at the Cannes International Film Festival in 1980, while Bayan Ko, Kapit sa Patalim competed in 1984. He continued writing poems and in 1999 was decorated as one of 100 Bayani ng Sining. Lacaba's poetry has been compiled in collection which include ang mga kagilagilagid na pakikipagsapalaran ni Juan de la Cruz in 1979, sa Daigdig ng Kontradiksyon in 1991, at sa Panahon ng Ligalig in 1991. In honor of Lacaba for being the 2008 Lifetime Achievement Awardee, the classic film Bayan Ko was screened as the closing film of Dekada Cinemanila. According to Anima Aquelos, the daughter of Direk Tikoy and festival programmer of Cinemanila, Bayan Ko could be found in Toronto, Canada. Now, these are his works. His works includes first, ang mga kagilagilagid sa pakikipagsapalaran ni Juan de la Cruz in 1979, sa Daigdig ng Kontradiksyon in 1991, sa Panahon ng Ligalig in 1991, Days of Disquiet, Nights of Rage in 1982. These are some of the works of Lacaba. Now, one of his works that I will be highlighting in this report is The Force of Circumstances. The Force of Circumstances, or the Santong Paspasan in Tagalog, or in Filipino, which is written by Jose Maria F. Lacaba himself. Now, the characters of this poem are Marites, son of the congressman, and the gang and his gang. Now, the poem goes like this. When Marites was kidnapped by the son of a congressman, the stars flickered like fireflies and the moon was full. When Marites was taken to Novaliches, the wind was dancing with the tall grass and the cicadas whistled nervously. 4 members of his gang accompanied the son of the congressman. In his new Mustang, and Marites looked like Susan Roses. When the gang ripped off the expensive pantsuit that the gay designer had made for Marites, an earthquake was rocking Manila and the kids were demonstrating at the embassy. When the gang caressed the panties of Marites and pulled out her tampax, tear gas was crawling on the streets of Sampaloc, and Susan Roses was recommending Lux soap in TV. Four members of his gang accompanied the son of the congressman in the midst of the tall grass, and five young men mounted Marites. When Marites was released by the son of the congressman, her boyfriend got drunk. The papers shivered with glee and the cops jerked themselves off. Mr. Congressman is set to run in the coming elections. Let us not forget him. Now, the theme of the poem are the injustice and the power corrupts humanity. Now, let us proceed to the poem analysis. The poem is about a woman named Marites whose face was likened to two famous TV personalities, namely Susan Roses and Belia Flores. It talks about the fate that Marites suffered under the hands of the congressman's son and his friends. She was taken on a starry night in an abandoned place in Novaliches. She was isolated by five men in a deserted open field. She was punished in her genital part but was later on freed. Her boyfriend was not able to accept what has happened to her, and so he drowned himself with alcohol. Her story was exposed by the media by the police, but the police did not do anything about it. The poem Force of Circumstances is similar to the event of Pepsi Paloma's rape case in 1982. Just like Marites, Pepsi was also Scarlett, who was gang raped by a couple of men who have the power to manipulate the law and media. Marites and Pepsi were both gang raped at a hotel located at Quezon City. They also both filed a lawsuit but forced to drop them by a political relative. The poem is a reflection of how influential people cover up their filthy actions through their power and wealth. Marites was not given the justice that she deserved because the police, despite knowing the truth, did not do anything to solve it. In the beginning of the poem, she was compared to the beauty of Susan Roses, who acts as protagonist in the film. It is a stereotype that the lead role possesses very good qualities, but is white, weak, and gullible, which resembles her. She was unable to escape the persons who want to take advantage of her. But later on, as we go on with the poem, she was likened to Belia Flores, who is well known for her villain role. I think that this twist has happened because she served as a threat to the image of the congressman and his family. She is treated as a suspect even if she is the victim. I conclude that the police were bribed to preserve the reputation that the congressman is taking care of, since he will be running for political position. It is of importance for him to maintain a good image of the public. Thus, the poem's subject is very realistic. It gives the readers a vivid awareness of what is really happening in the society. It does not cover it does not cover up dirty deeds of the people regardless of their wealth, power, and influence. Just like what Matthew Arnold said, poetry is of a higher truth and seriousness, or it reflects the society. Now let us proceed to the moral lesson of the story. People should choose leaders who are true to their words and accountable to their actions. Of course, as a leader, we should always take what is right and we should always choose what is righteous or moral to the eye of the people and to the law of the country. Leaders should be the first one to obey the law regardless of fame, money, and authority. At its most basic level, it essentially means that no one is above the law. Every individual should, or what, no matter how wealthy or powerful you are, it is equally subject to the law. Meaning, if you have committed crimes, or you have committed inhumane or untoward crime to the people that is violating the law, you are advised to take action, or to be accountable to your actions. And I think that would be all for Jose Maria F. Lacaba and his poem, The Force of Circumstances. And now let us proceed to Lamberto E. Antonio. Lamberto E. Antonio is a Filipino writer. He was born in Caviao in 1946. He is a poet, writer of literature, and scriptwriter of a film. He graduated BA Political Science at the University of the East in 1969. He became editor-in-chief of the Dawn, the official journal of the UE, and president of Kadipan. Editor, editor of the Adarna Book Project of the Children's Communication Center. Now here are some of her works. He is the author of several critically acclaimed books. The Hagpis ng Talahib in 1971, The Pagsalubong sa Habagat in 1986, a National Book Award for Poetry, and The Pingkian at Apat Pang Aklat ng Tunggalian in 1997, which is also a National Book Award for Poetry. Now, Antonio is also is a 10 times awardee. He also won the grand prize of the epic narrative in the Cultural Center of the Philippines Literary Competition, and was hailed the Makata ng Taon by the Surian ng Wikang Pambansa. He also received the Gawad Manuel L. Rojas and the Pambansang Alagad ni Balagtas. His other accomplishments include the transitions of the literary works of Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Daylen Thomas, Octavio Paz, Rainer Maria Rilke, Arthur Conan Doyle, Leopold Singhor, Salvatore Quasimodo, Usman Awang, and Rabindranath Tagore. He also translated Renato Constantino's work, which is entitled A Past Revisited, or translated in Filipino as Ang Bagong Lumipas, in 1997 rather, and served as editor-in-chief of Diario Filipino and Kabayan Broadsheets and Pilosopong Passion magazine. Now let us focus to one of the work of Lamberto Antonio that I will be showing to you, his poem, which is entitled The Night of Construction Worker, or translated in Tagalog, Gabi ng Isang Piyon. The character of this poem is the construction worker. Now the poem goes like this. Night of a Construction Worker, or Gabi ng Isang Piyon by Lamberto E. Antonio. Unable to sleep, yes, hands have let go of the shovel, hammer, pipe, wire, and other tools, but his missile at 5 had failed to signal. Gravel, cement, and filling earth to let go of your breath. When the light bulb flickers out, there's only the dark to ask the nurse to flaring up, and the throbbing of the lithiest muzzle, blister, bruised, and cut on arm and finger, and the stab of the heart and brain. As you lie on cast-off plywood board, wood shriving, or empty cement bags in the solitary corner of the building, as sketched as yet on drafting paper, unable to sleep, one whose fatigue has sipped to the very bones needs a visit from drowsiness but before your gaze, cement mixers keeps churning without tiring it seems. More blood and sweat to mix with sand and cement. Flesh you will flap onto ribs of iron. The skeleton your pains turn second by second into a monster in return for wage that barely staves off hunger. For dreaming up more construction jobs to come, for prayers made mostly by sweat and magic spell. Moments like this when neon lights shade the dark, when labor constructor and greedy right-hand man have gone home. Dark shapes crouch and stick accusing fingers in the mind. Sunken cheeks of the sickly newborn or wife whose eyes blur. At the unappealing meal of fungi and grains of salt, and to cold night spread by the late hour, a prescribed balm on bare torso that resists convincing, it's turning into sweat, into skin and bones. How can you sleep? How can you fall asleep when each time you stretch on your back, it seems the stars are slowly swallowed up by the towering roof above? Only the dark in the corner to fly with furries, while gravel, filling earth and sand, refuse to let go, weighing on your breath. Each time the thought looms in your mind, you're part of the scaffolding yourself. One of these days will take part. Now the theme of the poem is all about the hardships and sacrifices of the construction worker or the peon. We have noticed the some words there from the poem that describes the hardship or the sacrifices of the peon, especially during the night when he is away or he was away from his loved ones, with his wife and his children. Now the analysis of the poem rather is that is goes like this. The Knife of a Laborer is a Tagalog poem that depicts the lives of every construction worker here in the Philippines. It is very distinctive because not every day people get to read poems or stories that is dedicated and portrays exactly what the lives and hardships of our fellow construction workers. In Philippines, where it is very difficult to find jobs, especially for those people who have no diplomas, being a construction worker is the only way for them to be able to sustain their family. Although one must say that it is very easy to land on this job, but this kind of job is or this kind of work is very demanding. The Night of a Laborer tells us the worries of every construction workers, how they risk their lives every single day because of the heaviness of their work, and no matter how hard they break their backs, it is still not enough to sustain every single need for their family. Some will actually look down on you if they learn that your job is a construction worker because it just means one thing to them that being a construction worker is one of the work that is not appreciated. It takes blood, sweat, and tears to build a structure for them. It takes lives to build a building. Now, in summary, A Night of a Construction Worker o The Gabi ng Piyon is a Filipino poem by Lamberto Antonio. The Gabi ng Piyon it is about a Filipino laborer who experienced difficulties and hardship in his work. Though everybody doesn't mind the suffering, they still continue it as long as they have a goal to achieve. Sa karimlan mo sorry, sa karimlan mo ngalaman maaring ihabilin ang kirot at silagbo ng iyong himaymay. This line in the poem, in the translated Filipino, in Filipino work of Lamberto, it conveys the message that every suffering, sacrifices of a worker would still end up in a good way. Construction worker keeps working hard as the day becomes hotter and their job is not made easier by the labors or layers of protective gears they have wear. They go home, rest, and go back to do it all again the following day. Being a construction worker is not easy. They still choose to work just to live in peace and choose to be there because of some illegal jobs. Now, the moral of the poem is in order to survive, we can do anything, but in a good way. We don't mind the sufferings, we don't mind the sufferings, we continue to live and work with perseverance and dedication to our work. Now, in the Philippine setting, construction workers are being looked down upon. A kind of job having a cheap salary makes it a not so notable job. Of notable job. Even if anyone can attain that job without even finishing a bachelor's degree. However, even though being a Filipino construction worker seems hard, the very culture of the Filipinos, which is being hardworking, or which are being hardworking, family oriented, and dedicated to one's work and families, is highlighted in the poem. No matter how little the perception of the people for being a construction worker or how little the salary is, it is it is still a notable job. Risking one's life to provide for the family is something anyone can be proud of. Of course, you should be proud of that kind of work because it is legal. You are not doing some illegal things like having to buy, having to sell the illegal drugs or having to do the trafficking because a construction worker is a legal job that it should not be ashamed. It is, I think it is an under, for me personally, I think it is one of the underrated jobs because you can never build a good quality of building, have building owned by by a CEO or building that is highly that high tech or that is being built in a city that are or where the professional people work because the foundation of that the foundation of the building came from the sweat and the blood of the construction workers. And I think it is very important. It is important for us to appreciate them. That is why that is why that is why during the during May 1 in our Philippine calendar, we celebrate the Labor's Day to celebrate the excellency and the hard work of our Filipino workers, especially the construction workers who have given their efforts in building us safe building in building in creating safe buildings, infrastructures, and streets for us to be able to be safe during our work or during our travel. So that is why it is very important for us to appreciate them. And I think that would be all for my part, or that would be all for my part of the report. That those are the people that I have mentioned are Jose Maria Flores Lacaba and Lamberto E. Antonio are Filipino writers during the martial law that wrote these two incredible poems that which are entitled Force of Circumstances and The Night of a Construction Worker. And now I will give it to the next reporter to discuss more on the authors or the people during all the people that wrote notable works during the martial law.
Good morning, everyone. Now, I will discuss to you the Typhoons written by Virgilio S. Almario. But now, let us first discuss about the author. Virgilio S. Almario was born in March 9, 1944. He is better known by his pen name Rio Alma. Virgilio S. Almario, or Rio Alma, is a Filipino visual artist, author, poet, critic, translator, editor, teacher, and cultural manager. He was also elected as the chairman of the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, or NCCA. So, Rio Alma is a prolific Filipino artist, critic, translator, editor, teacher, and cultural manager. He is also one of the many national artists here in the Philippines and is currently serving a government agency commission who has a Wikang Filipino that mandates to accredit the promotion of Filipino language to be a standard uses of each citizen. Almario sought his education at the city of Manila and completed his degree in AD Political Science at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. His life as a poet started when he took master's units in education at the University of the East, where he became associated with Rogelio G. Mangahas and Lamberto E. Antonio. He took his master's in arts in Filipino in 1974 at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. So, Virgilio S. Almario spent his whole life in Bulacan, where he first decided to write a poem. So, flashed in your screen are some of the famous works of Rio Alma, which are first the Palipad Hangin, which was written in 1985, the Katon para sa Limang Pandama, written in 1987, Sentimental, 2004, Estrimilonggoles, 2004, Memo Mulang Gimukudan, written in 2005, Das Devils, written also in 2005, and the Sonitos Postomos, which is book of poems with translation by Marnie Kilatis and paintings by national artist and Kyokok, which was published and written in 2006. But now, I will be highlighting his work entitled Typhoons. So, flashed here is the poem entitled Typhoon, written by Rio Alma. So, as you can see, here is the poem. The typhoon's episodes of terror are yearly. Berserk winds and shattered glass streaming from the mouths of 1,000 serpents. Smoke of dark crystal billowing from beyond the ancient shoulders of the bristling land. The heavens crawl with crackling electricity, and the verdicts of thunder are without forgiveness or pity. There were nights when we were children watching and listening for the keening and whiplash of wet, demented monsters. Turning wildly, they tore every roof. They toppled and smashed every wall and post. The drains and canals choked. The distressed bamboo begged for mercy. We shut our eyes at the final rumbling rape of our poor street crops, the helpless land. Tightly, we shut our eyes, tightly, ever tightly, only to wonder in the morning what power of sun expunged and expelled these armies of the night. So in this poem, the poet Virgilio S. Almario tells of when he was an impressionable child living likely in Asia, where typhoons are most prominent. The season would likely be May through October, and the children waited for these demented monsters to tear every roof and topple every wall. Of course, typhoons are wicked, destructive storms, but they are hardly mentally demented, nor are they living monsters. Here, poet Rio Alba has created a poetic element called personifications for descriptive imagery. So there are also further examples of personification present in the poem. Like for example, instead of merely saying that typhoons caused severely rapid flooding, Virgilio Almario states that drains and the canals choked. We know that drains and canals flood, but they don't choke. Choking is an animal and human response, not a response of inanimate object. Also, upon reading the poem, we can say that the poets likely lived on an island in the western Pacific, where many homes were constructed from bamboo. He states this line, the distressed bamboo begged for mercy. So, we may realize that Alma is speaking of the damaging winds and rain destroying their bamboo homes. He and his friends may well have begged for mercy, but the distressed bamboo itself cannot beg. Here again, we can say that the figure of speech personification is present. So, the Typhoon is a wonderful free verse poem to depict a youngster's emotions and experiences growing up amidst destructive seasonable typhoons. So, typhoon is also a brief 23-line poem with no rhyme, no rhythm, but rich with wonderful examples of alliteration and personification. Another example of alliteration here is the heavens scroll with cracking electricity and the verdicts of thunder. Here, there is so indicative of the crash of lightning and thunder with the sound K. And of course, again, there are the presence of the two figures of speech, which are the personification and the alliteration. I guess that would be all for my part, which is about the works of Virgilio S. Almario. Now,
Good day, everyone. My name is Salwana Ruby. Today, we're going to tackle about an essay of Carmen Guerrero Nakpil entitled "The Filipino Women." Okay. First, we have the background of the author. Carmen Guerrero Nakpil was born on July 19, 1922. She graduated with a Bachelor of Arts degree in 1942 at St. Teresa's College in Manila. She was a journalist, author, historian, and a public servant. So between 1946 and 2006, she worked as either staff member, editor, or editorial columnist at the Evening News, the Philippines Herald, the Manila Chronicles, where she had a daily column for 12 years, the Manila Times, Asia Magazines, and Malaya. She has published a total of 10 books. These are the following: Women Enough, A Question of Identity, History Today, The Philippines and the Filipinos, The Rice Conspiracy, The Central Reader and Whatever, as well as a widely successful autobiographical trilogy, Myself, Elsewhere, Legends and Adventures, and Ixion. In the 1960s, she serves as chairman of the Philippine National Historical Commission, and in the 1990s, the Manila Historical Commission and Director General of the Technology Resource Center from 1975 to 1985. She was elected to the Executive Board of the UNESCO, Paris in 1983. By popular vote of the International Assembly. She was also a recipient of the C. Wright Award. So, for the summary of the essay of Carmen Guerrero, which is the Filipino women that focuses on Cory and Leonor, Gabriela, and Imelda. Let me read to you the summary. Who are the Filipinos? What is it like to be a Filipino woman? How do you describe yourself? These are important questions questions in finding our true identity as a nation and the identity of a Filipino woman in our modern world. Nakpil chose 4 historical women, Cory, Leonor, Gabriela, and Imelda, to represent most, if not all, the women in our nation throughout the years. Cory and Leonor both came from the same small town and had both gone through the loss of a loved one. However, that is where the similarities end. Their differing personalities and the decisions they made lead them to very opposite roads in life. While Leonor was obedient and submissive to her parents and society, Cory overcame the tragic loss of her husband and became the first woman president of the Philippines. Gabriela and Imelda also had different stories to tell. Gabriela became a rich widow after her first husband died. However, she married a peasant leader and took up his revolution against Spain after he was shot in the back. The opposite was true for Imelda. She was a daughter of the least successful child in a family of professional and government officials. But she later married the only Philippine president to reign for 20 years in office. Nakpil highlights that these women, although somehow similar, reflect the different personalities and attitudes that make up a Filipina rather. All the traits these women show, both positive and negative, can be seen in Filipino women migrant workers. These women migrant workers have sacrificed time, memories, and contact with their families just to earn a suitable income. Many of them are overqualified for the work given to them overseas, sacrificing their dignity but rising above the challenge of poverty to provide a future for their families. Despite everything Filipino women have gone throughout the centuries, they keep an identifiable Filipino trait with their unquenchable optimism. So, in taking everything into account, the essay talks about the true identity of Filipino women, different personalities, as well as the identifiable Filipino traits. And that's all for my part about the essay of Carmen Guerrero Nakpil, which is entitled The Filipino Women, which focuses to the four women, which that focuses on the four women. Those are Cory, Leonor, Gabriela, and Imelda. I hope you learned a lot about the Filipino women.